when I was a kid, my parents got divorced when I was like 4. And aside from all the obvious stuff, one of the major things that was a result of that was that my mom lived in New York and my dad lived in Florida. And so every summer, I would go to Florida for the summer to see my dad because it was so far. I couldn't really travel back and forth. And so when I was staying with my dad, I was usually staying with my grandparents. And so I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and a lot of time, in effect, being raised by my grandparents and hearing their stories and following their rules. And I think that to some extent affected how, how things were for me growing up, because there was like a whole other generation there. Made me take on some values and habits and whatnot that are a little older than I am, because I learned these values and habits from them. They were very much affected by the Depression. They, like trouble having enough to eat during the Depression. So the entire idea of putting more food on your plate than you can eat and then leaving the rest of it there still bothers me. And it's not about how much you're eating, it's how much you're wasting. Waste makes me crazy. And I'm pretty sure that kind of goes back to, being raised so intimately by people who were so adverse to waste themselves that, I still see that in myself, and I'm pretty sure that it goes back to that. So, here's this thing, and I'm obviously nowhere near the generation to have gone through the Depression, and yet here's the Depression still affecting me 60 years after, 70 years after it happened, because I spent so much time as a kid with people who were so greatly affected by it. I met Mark at work. At the time, we were both archaeologists, and at the time anyway, the way things worked is a company would have a job that they were going to do, and they would hire some archaeologists for the extent of the job. And so it was kind of you were kind of contracted to do each individual job. And we had both, without knowing each other or anything, had gotten hired by a company to do a big survey project in the middle of nowhere in Indiana. And we were living on the military base and living in the barracks. And so when we actually first met each other was just at work. We were working on the same project. And we were so far out in the middle of nowhere that there wasn't really anywhere to go to do stuff, go out to eat or, go to movies or whatever. We mostly just sat around watching the 3 channels that were on the TV in the barracks. And so at the time, I traveled with a Scrabble board, and I started asking around on the crew for someone who would play Scrabble with me. And Mark was the only one who would play Scrabble with me, and he'd never really played before, but he was, he was game. And so he would come over because the boys were in the men's barracks, the girls were in the officers' barracks because there was only 2 of us. But he would come over to the officers' barracks, and we would play Scrabble and eat our dinner and stuff like that. And it wasn't until much later that we realized that the entire crew thought that we were dating, and that there was this whole big drama going on, and really we were just sitting around playing Scrabble and eating our dinner. But that was how we met and how we got to know each other and how we got closer, was playing Scrabble. So it's kind of still a thing. Every so often we pull out the Scrabble board. Oh, that's pizza and ice cream, but mostly pizza. because you can like, there's not just one pizza. There's all the pizzas and all the different types of pizzas and kinds of pizzas and the crusts and the sauce and the different toppings you can have, and it's all good unless it's a Totino's pizza. That's just revolting. But I don't know. I mean, there's people that are open and welcoming and willing to try new and think about new and, you know, embrace other new and creative and interesting. And then there's closed people who think they have it all figured out and that nothing needs to be any different from what it is, and it needs to be just like them, and if it's different from them, then that's a problem. And I don't know, so you've got open people and closed people.